The Miami sun blazes down on the pristine waterfront venue as wedding guests shift uncomfortably in their designer chairs, their whispered conversations creating a buzz of cruelty that cuts through the ocean breeze. "I can't believe James is actually going through with this," hisses a woman in Chanel, her manicured fingers clutching her champagne flute. "She's so heavy. And honestly, not attractive at all." At the altar, Mary Thompson stands radiant in her flowing white dress, her round face glowing with pure joy as she gazes into the eyes of James Collins, Miami's most eligible bachelor and founder of Collins Tech Solutions. But what happened next shocked everyone who thought they knew this love story. James doesn't hear the whispers. His eyes are locked on Mary's, seeing only the woman who changed his world 18 months ago at the Children's Cancer Foundation Gala. While other guests mingled with cocktails and business cards, he'd found her in the hospital wing, reading Charlotte's Web to a group of young patients, her voice bringing magic to their tired faces. "That's when I knew," James had told his best friend Marcus just last week. "Beauty isn't what you see in magazines. It's someone who lights up a room not because of how they look, but because of who they are." Little did the wedding guests know that their cruel judgment would soon backfire in ways they never imagined. The ceremony continues as Mary's voice trembles slightly while speaking her vows. "James, you saw me when I felt invisible. You loved me when I couldn't love myself." Her words carry across the venue, but instead of warming hearts, they trigger more hushed commentary. "Poor James," mutters his business partner's wife. "His company stock will probably drop when investors see who he married. Image matters in business." Behind them, Mary's own cousin Sarah shakes her head. "I tried to talk her out of wearing white. It's just not flattering on someone her size." The woman beside her nods knowingly. "And that hair, that makeup, she really should have hired a professional team." But the real shock was still coming. As the officiant asks for objections, a heavy silence falls over the crowd. Mary's heart pounds, terrified someone might actually speak up. She catches fragments of conversations that slice through her confidence like razor blades. Ugly floats through the air, followed by snickers about her settling for someone out of her league. James notices Mary's sudden tension and squeezes her hands tighter. "Hey," he whispers, breaking protocol. "Look at me. Only me. Nothing else matters." The moment transports Mary back to their first real conversation at that charity event. She'd been hiding in the hospital cafeteria after overhearing two volunteer coordinators discussing how they'd need to manage optics if she represented the foundation at public events. James had found her there, tears streaming down her cheeks. "They're wrong," he'd said simply, sitting across from her with his coffee. "I've been watching you with those kids for 2 hours. You have the most beautiful heart I've ever seen." "You don't have to be nice," Mary had replied, wiping her eyes with a napkin. "I know what I look like." "Do you know what I see?" James had leaned forward. "I see someone who just spent her Saturday making sick children laugh. I see someone who donated her entire paycheck last month to help a family afford treatments. Beauty fades, Mary. Character doesn't." Now, standing at this altar surrounded by judgment, Mary remembers his words and finds her strength. She completes her vows with growing confidence, but the crowd's energy remains ice cold. As they're pronounced husband and wife, the applause is polite but hollow. During the reception, groups cluster together, their conversations a symphony of schadenfreude. "Give it 6 months, predicts James's college roommate. He'll realize what a mistake this was." "She's sweet, I'm sure," adds another guest, "but marriage is about more than personality. Physical attraction matters." Mary overhears this while walking past their table toward the restroom. Her steps falter, and for a moment, the confident bride facade cracks completely. In the mirror, she sees exactly what they see, a woman society deems unworthy of love, especially love from someone like James. This decision would change everything, but not in the way anyone expected. As the evening winds down, James's business mentor, Robert Sterling, approaches him at the bar. "Son, I need to be direct with you," he says, his voice low but firm. "Your personal choices reflect on your professional reputation. Some of our biggest investors were here tonight, and the conversations I'm hearing. He trails off meaningfully. James's jaw tightens. What kind of conversations, Robert? The kind that question your judgment. If you can't make smart decisions about your personal life, how can they trust you with their millions? Robert's words hang in the air like a threat. But what Robert and every other doubter at that wedding couldn't possibly know was that Mary Thompson wasn't the same person they thought they were judging. James's hands trembled slightly as he pulled Mary aside from the reception crowd, his jaw set with determination. The wedding guests' cruel laughter still echoed in the humid Miami air, but James wasn't about to let another second pass without addressing what had just happened. "Mary, look at me," he said firmly, cupping her face in his hands as tears threatened to spill from her eyes. "That person's words don't define you, and they sure as hell don't define us." But the damage was already seeping into Mary's heart, reopening wounds that had never quite healed from her teenage years in Chicago. As they drove home to their new life together, Mary's mind drifted back to Lincoln High School, where the hallways had been a gauntlet of whispered insults and pointed fingers. She remembered hiding in bathroom stalls during lunch, pretending to eat while listening to classmates mock her appearance. Fat Mary, they'd called her, and worse things that still made her stomach turn 15 years later. "Hey, where'd you go?" James asked, squeezing her hand as they sat in traffic. Mary forced a smile, but James knew her too well already. He'd seen that distant look before, during their late-night conversations when she'd shared pieces of her past like fragile glass ornaments, each memory handled with care. The transition to married life in their cozy Chicago neighborhood brought its own challenges. Mrs. Patterson from next door made a point of introducing herself with raised eyebrows and barely concealed surprise. "Well, aren't you two an interesting pair," she'd said, her words dripping with false sweetness. "James, dear, I had no idea you were the type to settle down with someone so different." James felt his shoulders tense, but Mary quickly changed the subject, offering homemade cookies and genuine compliments about Mrs. Patterson's garden. Later that evening, as they unpacked boxes in their living room, James exploded with frustration. "I can't stand how people look at you, at us. It's like they're waiting for some kind of explanation." "Maybe they deserve one," Mary whispered, folding James's shirts with methodical precision. "Maybe I should lose weight, get my hair done professionally, buy nicer clothes." "Mary Elizabeth Collins," James said, using her new married name with deliberate emphasis, "you don't owe anyone a damn thing. You're brilliant, you're kind, and you make me laugh until my sides hurt. That's what matters." But as weeks turned into months, the constant pressure began wearing on both of them. Mary started declining dinner invitations, claiming she was tired or had work to catch up on. James found himself defending their relationship more often than he'd ever expected, even to his closest friends from college. "Dude, I'm not trying to be harsh," his friend Mike said during their monthly golf game, "but are you sure you're not settling? I mean, you could have any woman you wanted." James gripped his golf club tighter. "I have exactly the woman I want." The real test came when they joined the local community center gym, hoping to start a healthy routine together. Mary had always been intimidated by fitness spaces, but James encouraged her, promising they'd take it slow. However, their first week became fodder for neighborhood gossip faster than either of them anticipated. "Did you see them at Planet Fitness?" Mary overheard Mrs. Patterson telling her friend at the grocery store. "The poor dear was huffing and puffing on the treadmill for maybe 5 minutes." I almost felt sorry for James, having to pretend to be supportive. That night, Mary stared at herself in their bedroom mirror, pulling at her clothes and imagining the person she thought she should be. "What if I got surgery?" she asked James suddenly. "Like, really committed to changing everything about how I look?" James looked up from his laptop, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Mary, what are you talking about?" "I see how people look at us, James. At work functions, at the grocery store, everywhere. They're judging you for being with me, and they're judging me for existing in your world." Before James could respond, Mary's phone buzzed with a text from her sister Sarah back in Miami. "Saw the wedding photos on Facebook. You looked radiant, but honey, maybe it's time to consider that personal trainer we talked about. The message was the final straw. Mary felt something shift inside her, a familiar darkness creeping in that she'd fought against since high school. She was tired of being the before picture in everyone else's story, tired of apologizing for taking up space, tired of watching James defend a choice that others saw as charity rather than love. What Mary didn't know was that across town, James was facing his own crisis at Morrison and Associates, where his business partner Greg had just delivered an ultimatum that would change everything. "Look, James, I like you, but our clients are noticing. The Henderson account specifically mentioned concerns about your judgment after meeting your wife at the company picnic. Maybe it's time to consider whether this marriage is worth your career." As Mary sat alone in their living room that Thursday evening, surrounded by wedding photos and wondering if love was really enough to overcome a world determined to tear them apart, she had no idea that her husband was about to make a decision that would shock everyone who doubted them. The morning after their wedding, Mary stands in front of their bathroom mirror, examining her reflection with a mixture of determination and uncertainty. James appears behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I've been thinking," Mary says, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe it's time I start taking better care of myself." James meets her eyes in the mirror. "You're perfect exactly as you are, but if this is something you want for yourself, I'll support you completely." 3 weeks later, they walk through the glass doors of Fitness First, a trendy gym in downtown Miami. The conversation dies as heads turn their way. Mary feels every stare, every whispered comment burning into her skin. "Look who decided to show up," a woman in designer workout clothes murmurs to her friend. "I give it 2 weeks before she quits." Mary's cheeks flush red, but James squeezes her hand. "We're doing this for us, remember? Nobody else matters." Their trainer, Carlos, approaches with genuine enthusiasm. "Welcome. I'm excited to work with you both. What are your goals?" "I want to feel strong," Mary says, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "I want to feel like I deserve to be here." Meanwhile, at Collins Marketing Solutions, James faces his own battlefield. His business partner, Richard, corners him by the coffee machine. "Jim, we need to talk. The Henderson account is reconsidering their contract." "What? Why?" "Our campaign results exceeded their expectations by 30%. Richard shifts uncomfortably. "It's not about the work. They're concerned about your personal brand. Your wife's appearance at company events could affect their image." The words hit James like a physical blow. "Are you seriously suggesting I should be ashamed of my wife?" "I'm suggesting you think about what's best for the business. We've worked too hard to let personal choices destroy everything we've built." That evening, James doesn't tell Mary about the conversation. Instead, he watches her sort through workout clothes with a newfound sense of purpose. She's been going to the gym for 3 weeks now, and while the physical changes are minimal, something deeper is shifting. There's a lightness in her step, a spark in her eyes that wasn't there before. "Mrs. Peterson from next door complimented my garden today," Mary mentions casually. "She said I seem happier lately." "You do seem happier," James observes. "How are you feeling about everything?" "Different. Stronger, somehow. Not just physically, but mentally. For the first time in years, I'm doing something just for me." But their progress isn't going unnoticed. The neighborhood whispers follow them everywhere. At the grocery store, Mary overhears 2 women discussing her transformation attempt. "She's deluding herself if she thinks a few gym sessions will change anything," one says. "Some people are just meant to be invisible." The comment stings more than Mary expects, and that night she makes a decision that surprises even herself. She calls her sister in Chicago. "Sarah, I need your help. I want to do something dramatic. A complete makeover." "Mary, are you sure? You've never cared about that stuff before." "Maybe it's time I started caring. Maybe if I look the part, people will finally see me as worthy of James." 3 days later, Mary emerges from an upscale salon with a professional haircut, subtle makeup, and a wardrobe consultation that cost more than she's ever spent on herself. The transformation is striking, not because she's dramatically different, but because she carries herself with new confidence. At James's company barbecue that weekend, the reaction is immediate. Colleagues who had barely acknowledged Mary's existence suddenly engage her in conversation. Richard's wife, Patricia, who had been notably cold at the wedding, now gushes over Mary's appearance. "You look absolutely radiant, dear. That color is perfect on you." For a moment, Mary basks in the acceptance she's craved her entire life. She sees James across the patio, beaming with pride, not at her appearance, but at her confidence. But the triumph is short-lived. As Mary refreshes her drink at the bar, she overhears Richard speaking to another business partner in hushed tones. The makeover helps, but let's be realistic. James is still carrying dead weight. The Hendersons weren't wrong to be concerned. A man's choice in wife says everything about his judgment and priorities. The words crush Mary's newfound confidence like a house of cards. As she processes the devastating blow, she realizes that no amount of external change will satisfy these people. The problem was never really about her appearance, it was about their shallow values and James's career hanging in the balance because of her very existence. James appears at her side, ready to introduce her to a potential new client, completely unaware that in the next few minutes, everything they've built together will be put to the ultimate test. The conference room at Collins & Associates fell silent as James stood at the head of the mahogany table, his jaw set with determination. His business partner, Richard Martinez, had just delivered an ultimatum that would change everything. "You need to understand the optics here, James," Richard said, adjusting his expensive tie. "The Henderson account is worth $12 million. They specifically mention concerns about your personal situation affecting the company's image." James felt his hands clench into fists. Around the table, his colleagues avoided eye contact, some nodding in uncomfortable agreement. "Are you seriously asking me to choose between my wife and this business?" "I'm asking you to be realistic," Richard shot back. "We've built this company from nothing. Don't let personal choices destroy what we've created." Without hesitation, James gathered his papers. "Then consider this my resignation. I won't work with people who judge my wife based on her appearance rather than her character." He walked toward the door, then turned back. "And for the record, Richard, Mary has more integrity in her little finger than this entire room combined." The door slammed behind him, leaving his former colleagues in stunned silence. Meanwhile, Mary sat in her mother's living room in Chicago, tears streaming down her face as her own family delivered their own crushing blow. Her sister Linda paced back and forth, gesturing dramatically. "Mom's right, Mary. This whole situation is embarrassing. James might love you now, but what happens when reality sets in? You're setting yourself up for heartbreak." Mary's mother, Patricia, leaned forward with false concern. "Sweetheart, we just want what's best for you. Maybe it's time to consider if this marriage is really working. The whole neighborhood talks about you too." "He loves me," Mary whispered, her voice barely audible. "Love fades," Linda snapped. "But humiliation lasts forever." That evening, as Mary sat alone in their apartment, a sharp pain shot through her chest. She gasped, clutching her side as the room began to spin. The stress of recent weeks had taken its toll, and her body was finally rebelling. James found her collapsed on the kitchen floor when he returned from his explosive workplace confrontation. "Mary! Oh God, stay with me." He dialed 911 with shaking hands, cradling her head in his lap. At Chicago General Hospital, the emergency room doctor delivered sobering news. "Mrs. Collins is experiencing severe stress-related symptoms. Her blood pressure is dangerously high, and we need to monitor her heart rhythm. This level of emotional strain could have serious long-term consequences." As James sat by Mary's bedside, holding her hand while she slept, he felt the weight of the world crushing down on them. They had lost support from work, family, and friends. The very people who should have celebrated their love had become their biggest obstacles. But then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Rodriguez from their apartment building knocked softly on the hospital room door. Behind her stood a small group of neighbors, each carrying flowers or homemade food. "We heard what happened," Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly. "We've been watching you two for months, seeing how happy you make each other. It's time we spoke up." An older man named Frank stepped forward. "Son, I've been married 50 years. What you two have is special. Don't let anyone tell you different." Word of their hospital visit began to spread through their community. People who had whispered behind their backs started to see the genuine love between James and Mary. Social media posts began appearing with hashtags like #LoveWins and #RealLove, shared by neighbors who had witnessed their devotion firsthand. As Mary slowly opened her eyes, she found James studying her face with intense concentration. "I quit my job today," he said simply. Instead of panic, Mary felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. She squeezed his hand and made a decision that would shock everyone who thought they knew her. "James, I want to do something that will change everything. I'm tired of hiding from who I am." Her eyes blazed with newfound determination as she sat up in the hospital bed, and James could see something fundamental had shifted inside his wife. The scared, insecure woman who had walked down that Miami aisle was gone, replaced by someone ready to fight for herself and their love. But what Mary was planning to do next would leave their entire community speechless and force everyone who had doubted them to completely reconsider everything they thought they knew about love, courage, and the power of believing in yourself. 2 years later, Mary Thompson Collins stands at the podium of the Miami Community Center, addressing a packed auditorium of over 300 people. Her voice carries clear and strong across the room as she announces the successful launch of the True Beauty Initiative, a nonprofit organization she founded to combat body shaming and promote self-acceptance. The woman who once cowered at wedding whispers now commands attention with genuine confidence that radiates from within. "When I started this journey," Mary says, her eyes scanning the audience, "I thought transformation meant changing my appearance to please others. What I discovered instead was that real transformation happens when you change your perspective about yourself." The audience erupts in applause, and in the front row sits James, beaming with pride at the woman he always knew she could become. The revelation that stuns everyone comes when Mary shares the full story of James's sacrifice. 2 years ago, when his colleagues threatened his business reputation over their marriage, James didn't just defend Mary, he walked away from his lucrative corporate position entirely. He used his savings to help Mary launch her nonprofit while taking a significant pay cut at a smaller, values-driven company. "My husband didn't just love me as I was," Mary reveals, her voice thick with emotion. "He risked everything to support who I was becoming." The transformation isn't just physical, though Mary has indeed become healthier through her wellness journey. What's truly remarkable is her metamorphosis into a confident advocate who's helped hundreds of people overcome body image struggles. The gym where they once faced whispers now hosts her weekly confidence workshops. The neighbors who once gossiped now volunteer for her events, sheepishly admitting they were wrong about their initial judgments. Even Mary's family, who once questioned her choices, now serves on her nonprofit's board. Her sister Sarah, who had delivered the wedding day ultimatum, tearfully apologizes during the event. "I was so worried about what people would think," Sarah admits publicly, "that I almost destroyed the most beautiful love story I'd ever witnessed." She reveals that watching Mary and James's unwavering commitment inspired her to end her own superficial relationship and seek something more authentic. The most powerful moment comes when Dr. Martinez, James's former colleague who had threatened his career, approaches the couple after Mary's speech. With genuine remorse in his eyes, he admits, "I've been married 3 times, chasing what I thought looked perfect on paper. Watching your marriage made me realize I've never experienced real love." He announces his decision to sponsor the True Beauty Initiative's expansion into schools across Florida. As the evening winds down, Mary and James walk hand in hand along Miami Beach, the same shoreline where they'd taken their wedding photos 2 years earlier. "Do you ever regret it?" Mary asks quietly, still sometimes amazed by the depth of his commitment. James stops walking and turns to face her, the setting sun casting a golden glow around them both. "Mary, Before I met you, I was successful but empty, he says, taking her hands in his. You taught me that real beauty isn't what you see in magazines or movies. It's watching someone choose kindness over cruelty, courage over comfort, love over fear every single day. You didn't become beautiful, Mary. You were always beautiful. The world just finally learned how to see it. The couple's story has become legendary in their Miami community, proving that when love is genuine and commitment is unwavering, transformation becomes inevitable not just for individuals, but for entire communities. Mary's nonprofit has grown to serve 5 states, James's new company thrives on authentic values, and their marriage stands as testament to the power of seeing people for who they truly are. Their journey reminds us all that society's definitions of beauty and worth are fleeting, but the love that sees beyond surface appearances creates lasting change that ripples through generations. Sometimes the most profound victories happen not when we change ourselves to fit the world's expectations, but when we stay true to ourselves long enough for the world to change its perspective. What love story in your life has challenged society's expectations? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring true stories that prove love always wins.